I was just going to jump a ride with TPUSA. They were going to give me a ride back. Nobody at work knew about it. Okay. Fine. Tell us that, because it's deeply concerning. And is this normal? Have you ever done that before? And why didn't you have flights booked? If you were planning to go home between the Utah Valley University and the Colorado State event, why didn't you have a flight booked to Colorado State? Now, again, it could be, well, I didn't book it through work. I was planning to fly private. Was this normal? Do you normally fly private to these events? Because I was told that would be unusual. That would be a little unusual. But I cannot think for the life of me of any alternative explanation for the tent. Like, I've tried. The best I can come up with is people have a deep connection to Charlie Kirk sitting under tents, and this would somehow allow them to keep that deep connection alive. I mean, that's like the best I can come up with. That's honestly the best I can come up with, and I don't know. That is so weird to me. I can't believe somebody there was like, guys, don't do this. Whatever you do, don't put the tent up. We've all seen the gory footage, and the tent is part of the lore. Don't do it. It's like a satanic sacrifice. They can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. All right, I gotta switch topics here. I'm never gonna get through everything. I'm going to bring up, I'll go ahead and just bring the whole thing up, and then you guys can take a look at it. We are going to switch topics to the state's filing. Now, this was given to me by Blake Bednars on a X space last night. He texted this over to me. This is the filing, and there's some things I want to read out of it because it gives us real keen indication, perhaps, of what the state is intending to argue in the Tyler Robinson case. If you guys recall, there was a problem where one of the prosecutors had a child who was at the event. One of the county prosecutors who is actively prosecuting Tyler Robinson had a child who was at the event. I'll show you in a moment where that child was. I believe it's a female child. I believe I know exactly who it is. I'm confident I know exactly who it is, but I'm not going to name her on here. But I'll say her because that cuts 50% of the population out. But this is the state's motion in opposition to disqualify the Utah County Attorney's Office. So I want to read from a little bit of the relevant facts, just a few paragraphs here of the relevant facts. On September 10, 2025, Charlie Kirk hosted an outdoor forum sponsored by Turning Point on the campus of Utah Valley University. The event began several minutes after noon. Charlie Kirk sat on a stool under the tent at the bottom of the amphitheater, facing the Quads Center, where a microphone was set up a few feet away for attendees to debate him. I didn't find anything particularly compelling or controversial there. There was no line of sight. So here what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out if the Utah County Prosecutor's Office should be excluded on the basis of where the child was standing. In other words, would the child be called as a witness? There was no line of sight between the girl in the girl's position at the amphitheater and the shooter from the Losey Center's roof because the Sorensen Center stood between them. The girl would have had to move 75 feet to the southeast before establishing a line of sight with the shooter. Well, what is the problem you see here right out of the gate? It marries themselves to a single narrative, which is a gunshot came from the Losey Center. They're now marrying themselves to that. In other words, this girl can't be a witness because she couldn't have seen the Losey Center. Well, have the prosecutors or have Tyler Robinson's team seen the footage put out recently by I can't remember her last name, Kelly? She hangs out with Blake sometimes. She hangs out with Trigger Smart sometimes. I can't think of her last name for the life of me. Very talented reporter. And she comes out and she has spotted in one of the video feeds a figure moving on the Sorensen Center roof. Well, because they're marrying themselves to the Losey Center narrative, that kind of eliminates the fact that they might be looking into the Sorensen Center as a possibility at all. Now scroll down to paragraph 7. When everyone realized there'd been a shooting Attendees crouched down, and after a few seconds, people started running away. The girl followed suit. The girl ran into the building behind her, entering through the building's doors just north of. So again, establishing that everyone realized there had been a shooting. And I don't take this for granted. I don't look at this language and say, well, they can come back from this. No, their entire opposition rests on the fact that there was a shooting. I think potentially, if I'm Tyler Robinson, people, I come back and I say, hold please. Hold please. We don't admit there was Kelly Rabin. That's it. We don't admit there had been a shooting. We don't admit there had been a shooting. We would like to challenge the evidence that there was a shooting at all. We've not seen any evidence of a shooting. I've not seen video footage circulating of a shooting. I've seen nobody take a gunshot in any video footage. There are alternative explanations for how these injuries could happen, but no, this is the Utah County prosecutor basically marrying themselves to this. She never looked back at Charlie Kirk. Thus, she did not see him get carried away or see his wound. Also, she did not see anyone in the crowd or elsewhere with a gun. Did not see anything that made her believe anybody she saw was involved in the shooting. Again, establishing that she should not be called as a witness. She didn't see anything. Well, we'll question that in just a second. Final thing from the statement of facts here. Even after running into the building, she did not know what happened. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, according to the Utah County Prosecutor's Office, people in the crowd were unaware there was a shooting. You understand how significant that is right there. In an attempt to save the Utah County Prosecutor's Office, they're now hedging on the fact that witnesses might not believe there had been a shooting. Don't let that get past you. On the one hand, they're saying we can't be excluded because there was a shooting and she didn't see the shooting. On the other hand, they come right back behind it and say, in fact, the witness didn't even know there had been a shooting. You were at a shooting and didn't know there was a shooting? In fact, she just heard secondhand somebody had been shot. She sent 2 messages. We'll check out those text messages in a second to her family about the shooting. Those 2 text messages read, someone got shot. I'm okay. Everyone is going inside. Again, the Utah County Prosecutor's Office, in order to save themselves as the prosecuting agency on this case, has married themselves to there was a shooting and she was in a position where she couldn't have seen it. And then they went on to say, and she didn't even know there was a gunshot. People in the crowd, in other words, did not know there was a gunshot. Now, I want to fast forward here because a lot of this stuff is not necessary for the point I'm trying to make. And I want to read this paragraph right here, but I'm going to read it a little bit at a time and give you a little commentary. This is from the section titled, her potential testimony is neither necessary nor related to a contested issue. In other words, all these facts are uncontested. That's the Utah County prosecutor's position. I would love to read Tyler Robinson's attorney's response to this because as a defense lawyer, why am I going to give them uncontested facts? I'm contesting every fact. I mean, we haven't even had a preliminary hearing yet. Why are we agreeing to facts? You know what I mean? I cannot make this strongly enough here. Guys, the preliminary hearing isn't even until May that we're aware of. Why are we agreeing to uncontested facts? I'm hoping Tyler Robinson's lawyers come back and say, we didn't agree to any facts. I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm sorry, you guys were misunderstanding our position. Allow us, Judge, to clarify what it is we actually mean. We'll see if they file anything like that. Accordingly, this is, again, supposedly uncontested facts. The testimony that she, meaning the daughter of the prosecutor, the testimony that she could provide as a witness is both duplicative and obtainable from any other sources. What is more, the 5 witnesses whose witness statements defendant attached to his motion had personal knowledge of many more facts than she did. I'm going to assume they did not used incorrect English there and end with her name. I'm assuming they added the verb at the end of it. But whatever. We're going to let it pass. Unlike her, all 5 of the witnesses defendant identifies were much closer to Charlie Kirk when he was shot. Do you see that? This is supposed to be a section of uncontested facts. Tyler Robinson's lawyers need to push back on this. And all 5 saw the consequences of the shot, describing Charlie Kirk's death in gruesome detail. The consequences of the shot. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you how it works in the law. In order to be found guilty, the prosecution bears the burden. The defense does not have to prove a thing. In fact, the defense doesn't even have to put on evidence. The defense does not have to put on a case at all. The defense, in fact, in every jurisdiction I've tried a case in, I've never tried a case in Utah, admittedly. In every jurisdiction I've tried a case in, I think it's been 10 or 11, maybe 12 different states I've tried cases in, criminal cases. You have to move at the end of the prosecution's case in chief. You have to move after they close to dismiss the case, or not to dismiss, to rule in favor of the defendant in order to preserve your right to appeal. Those are the cases I've tried. That's what happens. And then the judge will establish, no, they've met the minimal burden in order to let the jury hear it. Would you like to put on a case? But at this point, we haven't even sworn in a jury. We haven't picked a jury. We haven't finished discovery. They're still sending stuff back and forth. Why? Why are we agreeing to uncontested facts that include that he was shot? Because keep in mind, in order for the prosecution to meet that very high burden, and the burden is very high, it's the highest burden in the law. The reasonable doubt standard is the highest burden we have in the law. Meaning, no person on that jury can have any reasonable doubt whatsoever that the defendant is guilty. If there's any reasonable doubt at all, the jury either hangs or they're acquitted. That's it. Those are the only options. So why would Tyler Robinson's attorneys concede to one of the elements? One of the elements is that he was shot. Or that there was a wound or there was some cause of death that Tyler Robinson caused. I don't know the murder statute precisely in Utah, but I guarantee you it means there's something in there where the defendant has to be responsible for the death of the victim. I promise you. Why on earth would you concede to the gunshot? No, I need you to prove there was a gunshot. I need you to prove there was a gunshot. I need you to prove that whatever happened where you think my client was, whatever tool, whatever weapon you think my client might have used in order to perpetuate the death of the victim. I need you to prove that that implement was used and that is what caused the injuries. And that the injuries are consistent with that implementation you're alleging was used? All right, let me fast forward a little bit more. Again, I genuinely hope Tyler Robinson's lawyers are not conceding a gunshot. Because if so, they need to watch this program. They need to watch a lot of programs. There are a lot of people out there right now, not just your humble host. A lot of people are looking at this saying, this doesn't look like a gunshot to me. Like, why didn't it go through the back of his neck? All right. Now we got to get to no conflict of interest here. Because Mr. Deputy Attorney has no conflict of interest. I'm going to let me read you this first paragraph here. But I'm going to raise an issue that I think must be answered in front of the judge. And if I'm Tyler Robinson's lawyers, I almost have to swear in this witness anyway, which is going to potentially disqualify at least that person. But I'll get to that in a second. Defendant also argues that because Mr. Deputy Attorney has a potential conflict of interest that requires disqualification, the personal conflict of interest must be imputed to the entire Utah County Attorney's Office because it took no steps to screen the deputy attorney from the case. and because he exercises supervisory authority over the office. All right. Let me show you the basis that I would attack, because I think this is devastating to me. I put this on X today, and I didn't get a good answer from anybody. I don't want to say that. I didn't get a satisfactory answer. I got some good answers. This is the affidavit filed in this case by the 18-year-old. I want to scroll through, read a few lines, and then I'm going to ask you a question. But let's hold all questions until I get to the end of it. It's not long. While under oath or affirmation, I swear to the truthfulness of the following facts. My name is blank. We all know her name, but I'm not going to say it. I'm 18 years old. Blank, who works at the Utah County Attorney's Office, is my father. I was present at Utah Valley University, where I am a student, on September 10th, 2025, when Charlie Kirk was shot. Now, the only things that are permitted in affidavits are personal knowledge. Does she have personal knowledge Charlie Kirk was shot? No. I would move to strike that. I would be good. If I'm Tyler Robinson's lawyer, I'm throwing a line in the sand very early on, and I'm saying, no, we're striking from the affidavit that Charlie Kirk was shot. I'm not allowing that. An affidavit is testimony. An affidavit is testimony, and a testimony has to be based on personal knowledge. She already admitted she doesn't have personal knowledge. She already admitted she doesn't have personal knowledge. She said, or they said earlier, that she had to go inside and had to ask what the hell happened out there. And it was inside when someone else told her she was shot. You're not allowed to put that kind of hearsay in an affidavit. So she doesn't have personal knowledge he was shot, but that's not the point I want to hang up on here. That's a side issue. I attended a class before Charlie Kirk event and arrived at the courtyard where the event took place at approximately 11:15 a.m. That at approximately 11:15, that actually should have been right here. I attended a class before the trial and arrived at approximately 11:15 a.m. at the courtyard. Okay. You got to be precise. Legal language is precise. The event did not take place at 11:15. You arrived at 11:15, but that's neither here nor there. Their English in this stuff in both the motion and the affidavit is pretty terrible. Does not make a good impression on me. I watched the event from the far right side of the amphitheater. I've marked my location with an X and Charlie Kirk's location with an XX on the image below. And I'll show you that image. She mentioned she left her bag. She mentioned he threw out hats. While the second person in line was speaking with Charlie, I was looking around the crowd when I heard a loud sound like a pop. Someone yelled, "He's been shot." Everyone crouched down. After a few seconds, people started running. I ran to the doors to the northwest of where I was. I entered a building near the HF on the image. As I was in the building, I did not really know what happened. That's important to me. I heard someone had been shot. At 12:25, I texted a family group chat. Someone got shot. I'm okay. Everyone's going inside. After I sent those messages, I spoke to someone in the building with me who told me that Charlie had been shot. I then texted the family group chat. Charlie got shot. And she has screenshots of that below. And then she talks about walking to find a friend. I did not see Charlie get shot. So you don't have personal knowledge he was shot. The last time I saw him before I looked away, before I heard the gunshot, I did not see him getting carried away or see his wound. This is interesting here. Both before and after the shot, as I looked around, I saw students and people who were there to watch the debate. Most were students. Some were older. That's been a recurring theme. A lot of people noticed there were a lot of older people there. I did not see anyone with a gun. I did not see anything that made me believe anyone I saw was involved in the shooting. And here is the image she provides of where Charlie was with the double X and where she was. Now, why might you want to call her as a witness, ladies and gentlemen? I would put her on the witness list based on this alone. Why would you put her on the witness list? She's standing right next to the bush where the guy in the maroon shirt was standing in. She's standing right next to the bush that Butch Hibbs allegedly was talking to. She's standing right in front of the Losi Center, which, by the way, this is not an accurate representation of this facility because those trees are not there. There are not that many trees there. There are 2 trees in front of the Sorensen building. This is the Sorensen building right here. There are 2 trees there. There's not 50 trees. This is not an accurate representation. But she is standing right next to the disputed bush. Why is there did you see a guy in a maroon shirt? Did you see anyone else in the bush? How many people were in the bush? Did you see anybody holding anything in front of them in the bush? Was anybody holding what looked like an iPad in front of the bush? In the bush? You know how many questions I would have for this witness now that I know we have one right next to the disputed bush? Put her on the witness list. Put her on the witness list. Tyler Robinson's lawyers, what the hell are you guys doing? Are you conceding he was shot? That is a contested fact. Are you conceding there's no weirdness going on in the bush? What about immediately after the shot? Do you remember how immediately after the shot, people were directing from right there? I could go show you the Life is Driving video. Adam Bartholomew captured them when he leaned over the rail and showed us from the top. There were 2 people on basically either side of that X directing traffic. One in front of the bush that had people standing in it, oddly and weirdly, and one just about where that X is, standing in front of a light pole. In fact, I can't think of anyone at the event I might want to talk to more than this person. I would love to talk to this person. I might move immediately, if it's permitted in Utah, to take this person's deposition right now. I think it's incredibly important to keep all of this in context. If they're going to be married to the fact, that's important to me. I heard someone had been shot. At 12:25, I texted a family group chat. Someone got shot. I'm okay. Everyone's going inside. After I sent those messages, I spoke to someone in the building with me who told me that Charlie had been shot. I then texted the family group chat. Charlie got shot. And she has screenshots of that below. And then she talks about walking to find a friend. I did not see Charlie get shot. So you don't have personal knowledge he was shot. The last time I saw him before I looked away, before I heard the gunshot, I did not see him getting carried away or see his wound. This is interesting here. Both before and after the shot, as I looked around, I saw students and people who were there to watch the debate. Most were students. Some were older. That's been a recurring theme. A lot of people noticed there were a lot of older people there. I did not see anyone with a gun. I did not see anything that made me believe anyone I saw was involved in the shooting. And here is the image she provides of where Charlie was with the double X and where she was. Now, why might you want to call her as a witness, ladies and gentlemen? I would put her on the witness list based on this alone. Why would you put her on the witness list? She's standing right next to the bush where the guy in the maroon shirt was standing in. She's